Welcome to my film review of Angry Birds 2. Now, this was definitely a movie I had absolutely no intention of seeing. I saw little clips of the Angry Bird characters, the whole put your phone away, be quiet kind of clips that they do in the build-up to the movie coming out, and I was like, God, no way am I going to go and see that. And guess what? I did. I went and saw it, which was surprising. And what happened is, I saw on Netflix that the first one was there, Angry Birds 1, which I hadn't seen. So I thought, do you know what? Bang, I'll give it a watch and then I'll go and see Angry Birds 2 at the cinema. And do you know, I really enjoyed the first one. I was surprised. I expected it to be rubbish. And the first one really surprised me. I'd probably give the first one like 7 out of 10. Perfectly good. Really quite enjoyable. Lovable characters. Quite enjoyed how the story progressed. Never felt bored at any point. Fast-moving, fast-paced. Really ticks all the boxes. A very, very good first movie. Obviously, I did used to play Angry Birds when I was younger, and then I realised when I was still playing it at 1:30 in the morning, I just had to take the app off my phone because it was way too addictive. So I have played Angry Birds back in the day, but not for 10 years or whatever. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I knew the concept of the pigs and the birds, and I was like recognising characters, thinking, oh yeah, I remember using you. So it had that kind of quite familiar, kind of satisfying, almost semi-nostalgic feel to it as an adult, and I quite enjoyed that. And the movie on the whole, the first one, was very good. The second one, however, I'm not going to say I was disappointed, but maybe now my expectations were a little bit too high and it didn't quite fulfill them. So I'm going to give the second one a 6.5 out of 10. So it's not a disaster. It's okay. This movie's definitely not aimed at me, really. I'm not the target audience. When I was in there was a few bunch of families watching it with young kids, and I've got to be honest, I was laughing at moments when the rest of the audience was silent, and they were hysterically laughing out loud at bits that I thought weren't in the slightest bit funny. But I guess that's the norm of an animated. Some will relate to the adults and some will relate to the kids. But the kids didn't laugh loads. I probably laughed more than the kids. That might be the concerning point. So I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10 in the sense that it was okay. I enjoyed it. It was fine. It felt like I almost got bored at times. Maybe it was because I was on a movie binge in the cinema and I was a bit tired. This was like the third film I'd seen back to back. Maybe I was needing something a little bit more like Spider-Man, something amazing at that point. Maybe I would have been better off watching Angry Birds first. But a 6.5 out of 10 isn't bad, but it did feel a little bit boring. And like I say, I was in a cinema where the kids didn't seem to have laughed out loud as often as what you might have thought. But again, it was an okay movie. It had an amazing retro soundtrack. Like for anybody, they put the soundtrack for mums and dads. Like it was pure like 80s, 90s, awesome retro soundtrack. Absolutely beautiful. So I really enjoyed that. And do you need to see the first movie, actually? I was thinking this to myself. Big no. Because early on, when they first introduce... What they do at the very start is they introduce all the characters that were in the first movie in a way that they didn't do in the first movie. They now introduce them like a it pauses them on screen and then gives them a little bit, this is the name and this is what he specialises in. He's fast, he's loud, he's explosive, whatever. And they let you know who's who. So you don't need to have seen the first one at all. You can go and watch this as a standalone movie. However, if you have seen the first one, obviously you're going to appreciate the characters a little bit more. You're going to know more of the characters' background story and how they interact and relate with each other. So you'll get a little bit more out of it. But that said, I'd seen the first one and still felt a smidge disappointed by this one. So in that regard, I'm not sure how much seeing the first one helped, because maybe, if anything, it made me feel a little bit disappointed by the second one. So you don't need to see the first one anyway, that's the key thing. But it's on Netflix, so give it a watch before you go, why not? And then the storyline of this movie just completely picks up where the first one left off. But again, you might think, oh, well, I haven't seen the first one. You said it was okay not to see the first one, and now he's saying the storyline of the second picks up where the first one left off. That doesn't make sense. But where the storyline of the second one begins is exactly where you would expect of it to have started in the first place. If you've ever played the game, you know the concept. Birds, pigs, you know what's happening there. Well, on the second one, we begin right there, right where the game is. Pigs, birds, conflict. Okay? Nothing should surprise you about that if you've ever played or seen the game on the app. Okay, so again, you don't need to have seen the first one. You don't need to have seen the first one at all. But why wouldn't you if you can watch it for free on Netflix? So, that's my point on that one. It did feel, like I said, I felt like I was getting a little bit bored at times, and I did note that on this one, they had like a side plot going on. You know how like on The Simpsons, there'll be what's happening with Homer and then what's happening with Maggie or whatever, little side plot, basically to fill the time. It felt a little bit like that was what was going on here. The side plot was very much, it was as if they'd said, right, we need a side plot to fill up the time, or we can't make this an hour and a half. The main theme of the side plot is cuteness. We're going to overdose on cuteness. And, it was cute. The characters in the side plot were like, turn it up to 11 for cuteness, and at times it almost made you feel a little bit sick, like, they're trying to be too cute, but it was still quite cute. And you're thinking, this is purely just a pointless side plot just to fill time, but eventually it does all come together, which is okay. So I'll let them off a little bit with the side plot, but again, it did feel like it was there to fill time, and on the whole, it did feel a little bit boring at times, almost like this could have maybe been an hour and 15-minute movie, get rid of 15 minutes, fast pace might have been a little bit better. So there you go. So do you need to see this at the cinema? Well, it's nice. It's visually beautiful to see at the cinema. I wouldn't necessarily say that you absolutely need to see this at the cinema. I mean, it's the kids' holidays, isn't it? So, what have you got to pick from at the moment? There's Toy Story, there's The Lion King. Do you know, I'd go and see The Lion King again. But I guess it depends on how young your kids are, isn't it? I'd probably rather see Toy Story again or The Lion King again than go and see this at the cinema. I mean, like I say, you're taking the family, you're taking the whole kids. It's going to cost you a bomb. This is what I would do with this movie. On a weekend when they do movies for juniors, a movie that's been out, it's pretty much finished at the cinema, and then after a week or two they bring it back and you can take the kids for like £1 each or something. That's when you see this movie. See it on the movies for juniors as cheaply as possible, because it's worth seeing at the cinema. It's nice, visually spectacular, and the kids are going to love it, aren't they? Because, it's a cartoon very much aimed at them at the cinema. But it's not good enough to warrant paying big bucks. I would rather pay to see Toy Story again or The Lion King. So there's my advice for parents with kids wanting to take this. In terms of for adults, if you're like me and you're thinking about going and seeing this, I wouldn't bother. I'd wait till it comes out on Netflix. Even if you've got the Cineworld Unlimited pass, I still probably wouldn't bother. I did find this a little bit boring at times. It was okay, but yeah, I wouldn't. I'd go and watch Spider-Man again, definitely. Spend your time watching something awesome while you're at the cinema, rather than something that's average. So I hope you found this review useful. 6.5 out of 10. Not terrible, not great. I've given you the best tips for how to see this on the cheap. Stick to my recommendation, and you won't have wasted any money. So there you go. Thanks very much for listening, and we will see you on the next review. Goodbye.